dinner, my stepmom said, "Be grateful I didn't throw you out when you were peeking at me." My dad looked at me like I was a problem he could finally get rid of. "You were peeking? What the is wrong with you? Pack your stuff. You're going back to your mom's." I stood up slowly, looked them both in the eyes and said, "Don't get too comfortable." A week later, a for sale sign was on the lawn, and they call me NONSTOP. Hey Reddit, I-17M. Don't even know how to begin this, but I guess if you're here, you've read the title and are probably wondering what the actual hell happened. Same. Because a week ago, I thought my dad was the one parent who had my back. My mom and I have never been close. She remarried some finance guy with a no kids unless it's mine vibe, and ever since I turned 13, it's been clear I'm more of a visitor than a son at her house. So I moved in with my dad and his new wife, let's call her Vanessa, when I was 15. It wasn't perfect, but it was home. Vanessa's younger than my dad, like 15 years younger, and was always kind of cold toward me. Not mean, just off. She'd say things that didn't sit right, like commenting on my intensity when I just asked for dinner plans, or accusing me of lurking if I walked into a room too quietly. I chalked it up to her not wanting a teenager around, and I tried to stay out of her way. She never acted like she wanted to be a stepmom, and I didn't ask her to be. My dad, though? He was my rock. He'd pick me up from school, taught me how to drive, and we'd work on his old Chevy on weekends. He wasn't perfect, but I never doubted he loved me. Until that dinner. Last week, we were sitting at the table, just the three of us. It was one of those forced family dinners where everyone pretends we're normal. My dad was talking about selling the truck, the one we'd been restoring together for months, and I made a sarcastic joke about how Vanessa must love the idea of getting rid of something old and sentimental. She went quiet, like scary quiet. Then she looked up, dead in the eye, and said, "Be grateful I didn't throw you out when you were peeking at me." Silence. Even the forks stopped moving. I was stunned. I couldn't even process what she meant for a second. Then my dad, turns to me with this disgusted look, like I just confessed to setting the house on fire. "You were peeking? What the hell is wrong with you?" I opened my mouth to explain, because no, I wasn't peeking, not even close. But he stood up and cut me off. "Pack your stuff. You're going back to your mom's." No questions. No benefit of the doubt. Just gone. I stood up slowly, looked them both in the eye. My chest was on fire. My ears were ringing. All I said was, "Don't get too comfortable." And then I left. That night I crashed on my friend's couch. The next day I moved back in with my mom, who barely looked up from her laptop. But a week later, I got a text from my friend across the street. "Dude, your dad's house has a for sale sign out front. And now, they won't stop calling. Vanessa, my dad, even my grandma. I haven't answered a single one yet, because I know something's up, and I'm gonna find out exactly what." I didn't sleep much that first week. Not because of guilt, because I didn't do what she said I did, but because of how fast everything collapsed. I mean, what kind of accusation is that? Peeking at me? I don't even know what she was implying. That I'm some kind of creep? Pervert? I shared that house with them for 2 years, and never once crossed a boundary. Vanessa walks around like she's the queen of the place, and I gave her nothing to complain about. I never even talked back. And yet, one sentence from her, and my dad folded like a cheap lawn chair. That's when I started thinking, why now? Why say that? And why was the house suddenly up for sale? I wasn't supposed to see the for sale sign. I think they assumed I'd be gone, blocked, deleted. But my friend Dylan lives across the street, and he's the one who messaged me. At first I thought maybe they were just downsizing. Maybe Vanessa finally got her way and convinced Dad to ditch the place and start over somewhere, without a teenager lurking in the hallways, as she once said. But then I remembered something. 3 months ago, I overheard Vanessa on the phone late at night. She was pacing the kitchen barefoot, whispering, thinking everyone was asleep. I gotten up for water and froze when I heard my name. She said something like, "We can't do it while he's still living here. That'll blow everything up." I didn't think much of it at the time. Assumed it was about something else. Maybe my dad's will or life insurance or something grown up and boring. But now it feels like that was the start of it. The plan. So I started digging. First, I logged into my dad's old laptop. He gave it to me to use for school when I moved in. Guess he forgot I still had admin access. I found emails. Not many, he wasn't tech-savvy, but enough. There was a thread between him and a real estate agent, dated a month ago. Way before that dinner. Subject line? Quiet listing options ASAP. They'd been planning to sell the house for weeks. Before they kicked me out. Before the dinner. That's when it hit me. Vanessa made up the peeking thing. It wasn't a reaction. It was a setup. A fast way to push me out, clear the house, and move forward with whatever scheme they were cooking up, without a teen in the way who might ask questions. Well, I'm asking now. And if they thought I'd just disappear, they were dead wrong. After I found the emails about the house listing, I tried calling my dad. I figured maybe if I confronted him directly, gave him a chance to explain, he'd come clean. Or at least listen. I was wrong. He didn't answer. Not once. I left 2 voicemails, then 1 more. The last one wasn't calm. I told him I knew about the sale, that I knew Vanessa lied about me, and that if he didn't call me back, I'd assume he was part of it. Within an hour, I was blocked. Phone, WhatsApp, email. That's when I knew he wasn't confused or manipulated. He was in on it. So I went to his office. My dad's a partner at a small construction firm in town. I used to go there after school sometimes when I was younger, hang out with the receptionist, spin in chairs, eat leftover donuts from the morning meetings. Felt surreal walking in again. Everyone smiled like nothing happened. I asked to see him. They said he was off-site at a client inspection. I knew that was a lie. His car was in the lot. I pushed a little. Said it was urgent family business. That's when his assistant, a woman named Carol who's worked there forever, got this weird look on her face. She leaned in and asked, "Is everything okay with the will?" "The what?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She looked nervous and said, "I just assumed. With all the documents they requested." "Never mind." She shut up real fast, but it was enough. I asked what documents. She wouldn't say. But now I had a new thread to pull. The will. Why would Vanessa and my dad be requesting anything about that? He's only in his 40s. Healthy. No issues. Unless they were planning to change something. Or erase someone from it. Someone like me. I walked out of that office with my stomach in knots and a fire in my chest. They weren't just kicking me out. They were trying to erase me. I needed proof. And I knew exactly where to start. The thing about my dad is he's predictable. For years he used the same family attorney, some guy named Ronald Brewer. I remembered his name because he gave me a squishy stress ball in the shape of a gavel when I was 12. Said it was for future negotiations. Funny how that turned out. So I Googled him, found his office, and showed up the next day. He looked surprised to see me. Uncomfortable even. "Ezra," he said. "Yeah, that's me. This is unexpected. Everything okay at home?" I gave him a look. "Not exactly, but I'm hoping you can help me understand a few things." He looked hesitant. "If it's about your father's estate, I'm not sure how much I can legally disclose without his consent." That was expected. But I came prepared. I pulled out my phone and opened an old email, a PDF of a notarized guardianship document from when I moved in with Dad at 15. I was still technically a minor when he made some legal declarations about me being his sole dependent. At the time, it was just a formality so I could transfer schools. But it gave me a way in. Ronald skimmed it, exhaled, and motioned for me to sit. "I'll tell you this," he said. "A new draft was requested last month. Your father and Vanessa came in together. There were significant changes." I felt my hands go cold. "What kind of changes?" He hesitated. "Ezra, they removed you." My ears rang. He explained that the new draft of the will excluded me entirely. No mention of guardianship, no college fund allocation, not even a clause about personal effects. My name was gone like I'd never existed. "They didn't sign it yet," Ronald added. "It's just a draft." But they were in a rush. I sat there, staring at the floor, because in that moment it wasn't about money. It wasn't about the house or the will. It was about knowing that the man I called Dad, who once told me he'd always protect me, had sat in a leather chair across from this desk and told a lawyer, "Erase him." That night I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just stared at the wall and asked myself one question. Why? Why now? Why this lie? What did I interrupt or ruin or threaten by existing in that house? I didn't have the answers yet, but I had something better. Motivation. After what the lawyer told me, something snapped. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was focused. Because if they were willing to kick me out over a lie, cut me out of the will, and sell the house behind my back, there had to be more. People don't just destroy relationships for nothing, especially not blood. So I started looking into everything I still had access to. Old bills, emails, photos, shared cloud storage. That's when I remembered. My dad once connected his online banking app to the family tablet so he could check balances while watching sports. He never disconnected it. And guess what? He never changed the password either. I know it sounds crazy, but I logged in. I know the layout, it's a small regional credit union. No two-factor back then. I wasn't trying to steal anything. I just needed answers. I went straight to the linked accounts tab. There were two. One I recognized, our main household account. The one Dad always used for groceries, car parts, and bills. The other, a new account, opened 6 months ago, labeled under a name I didn't know. H.G. Barrow. At first I thought maybe it was a business partner, client, contractor, but then I clicked View Activity. That's when I saw the transfers. Thousands of dollars weekly, being pulled from our joint account and dumped into this H.G. Barrow one. Every Friday like clockwork. And then I saw Vanessa's signature on several of the transaction memos. Things like, for retainer, consult deposit, quiet transition. But the biggest red flag? One memo from 3 weeks ago, just days before the dinner blow-up. Final installment. Close file after eviction. 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 It wasn't about peeking. It wasn't about some twisted misunderstanding. They were paying someone to get rid of me, and whoever H.G. Barrow was, they were helping make it happen. I screenshotted everything. Every line, every dollar, every note. Because now this wasn't just personal. This was legal, and maybe criminal. I didn't know it then, but I had just pulled the first thread in a much bigger web. And things were about to unravel fast. So yeah, after seeing the transfers to H.G. Barrow, I couldn't sit still. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. And I couldn't stop refreshing the page like it would change the meaning of what I saw. They paid someone to get me out. And that someone might have been more than just a legal consultant. I Googled the name. Got a hit. Harriet G. Barrow, private investigator. Licensed in our state. Office in a strip mall across town. Private. Investigator. Suddenly things clicked. That phone call I overheard months ago? The one where Vanessa whispered, "We can't do it while he's still living here?" This was it. She was building a case. And when she couldn't find anything to use, she invented something. I called the office pretending to be a potential client. Asked if Harriet specialized in family background checks or tenant removals. The receptionist hesitated, then said Harriet was booked solid for court testimony preparation. I hung up. Testimony. Were they preparing a court file on me? Was this part of some plan to make it look like I was the problem? So I went back through the screenshots. One of the earliest payments had a note. Background file on subject, E. Monroe. That's me. They hired a PI to dig through my life. For what? Dirt? An excuse? Ammunition? The final payment's note still echoed in my head. Final installment. Close file after eviction. That fake accusation? It wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment lie. It was planned, built, scripted. And my dad went along with it. That realization was somehow worse than everything else. Because maybe Vanessa was always calculating and manipulative. But he was supposed to be mine. My protector. My backup. The guy who took me in when my mom shut me out. And now I had undeniable proof that he let her run an entire campaign against me, with bank records, a private investigator, and a timeline that went back half a year. I saved it all. And then, for the first time since getting kicked out, I replied to one of my dad's texts. Meet me, one-on-one. No Vanessa. Bring everything. If you don't, I will. Let's just say, he showed up. We met at a diner off the freeway. One of those places with peeling leather booths and a waitress who calls everyone sweetheart. My dad chose it. Neutral ground, I guess. But I picked the seat that let me see the door. He showed up late. No tie, no briefcase. Just a wrinkled shirt and that look he gets when he's about to fire someone. He sat across from me and didn't even say hello. Just folded his arms and asked, "What do you think you know?" That sentence told me everything. He wasn't there to apologize. He was there to manage me, so I gave it to him straight. I slid my phone across the table and let him scroll through the screenshots, the transfers, the memos, the PI's name, the fake eviction line. He didn't blink at first, just stared, quiet. Then he handed the phone back and said, "You shouldn't have gone through my accounts." That's what he led with. Not denial, not outrage, just that. I laughed, bitter. That's your takeaway? Not the fact that you and your wife hired someone to dig into me? That you threw me out based on a lie you paid for? He sighed and finally spoke. It wasn't supposed to go that far. And boom, just like that, he admitted it. Not in so many words, but enough. I pressed him. Why? Why did you need me gone so badly that you'd pay someone to frame me? What did I do? He rubbed his eyes. It wasn't about you, Ezra. It was about timing. We were making some moves financially. Vanessa didn't want complications. You being in the house created a variables. I just stared. Variables? I'm your son. He looked genuinely pained, and for a second I thought he might actually say something human. But then he said this. You were almost 18. It was time. Like I was a lease expiring. No apology. No remorse. Just strategy. I stood up, threw some cash on the table. Not for him, for the waitress, and leaned in close. You didn't just lose a variable. You lost a son. And then I walked out. He didn't follow. But later that night I got a message. Not from him. From Vanessa. Just 3 words. You made a mistake. And that's when I knew. This wasn't over. After that message from Vanessa, you made a mistake. I didn't sleep. I wasn't scared. I was done. Done pretending this was a misunderstanding. Done hoping my dad would wake up and realize what he'd become. Vanessa's message didn't even include punctuation. Just cold. Flat. Final. Like a warning. But the next day, I got something else. It was a manila folder hand-delivered. No envelope, no postage. Just sitting inside my mom's screen door when I came home from school. Inside, a typed document, maybe 15 pages, stapled. The cover page read, Subject File Ezra Monroe. My name. And under it, compiled by Barrow Investigations, LLC. She gave it to me. Whether it was a warning, a scare tactic, or a power move, I don't know. But it was all there. The screenshots from my social media. Photos of me outside school, at work, even one at a gas station. The notes about emotional dysregulation, quoting things like me yelling at a football game and leaving the house at 11 p.m. once to walk off stress. Mentions of estranged maternal household, and that I displayed unstable living patterns. It was all twisted, selective, spun. They were building a profile, one that made me look unstable, risky, volatile. The kicker? There was a draft of a restraining order application. Never filed, but fully filled out. Claimed I made Vanessa feel unsafe in her home. Cited unpredictable behavior, verbal intimidation, and suspicious hallway incidents. This was never about a single lie. It was a campaign. They were planning to remove me legally, to make sure I couldn't come back, and maybe even to justify it if I ever went public. My hands were shaking by the time I finished reading, because for the first time I realized this wasn't just betrayal. It was character assassination. They weren't content kicking me out. They wanted to destroy my reputation, too. But here's the thing they didn't count on. I kept records, too. The moment I finished reading that folder, I knew what I had to do. For months, I'd been dismissed, lied about, cast aside. But now I had their file, and mine was even better. See, I've never been the kind of guy to record people secretly. But after Vanessa started acting weird earlier this year, passive-aggressive one day, sweet and smiley the next, I began feeling like I needed to protect myself. So I started keeping voice memos. Not every day, just when she said things that made my skin crawl. Like the time she told me, "This house only works when everyone knows their place." Or when she said, "Your father has a lot to lose, and you're not worth the risk." I had dates. I had audio. I had proof she was orchestrating something long before that dinner. And I had texts from my dad too. Old ones. Where he told me he'd always support me. That Vanessa just needs time. That, "You're my son no matter what." So I called a lawyer. Not some fancy litigator, just a guy a friend's brother knew who did family and housing law. I laid it all out. Told him I wasn't after money. I just wanted to know if what they did was legal. He asked for everything. I emailed him the PDFs, the voice memos, the screenshots from the bank accounts. 3 days later, he called me back and said, "This is worse than I thought." He told me hiring a PI isn't illegal, but weaponizing a false narrative to justify an eviction? Creating a paper trail designed to damage a minor's record? And then trying to amend legal documents like a will right after that? Highly questionable, possibly actionable. And then he said this, "There's a pattern here. Have you ever checked if Vanessa's done this before?" I hadn't, but now I couldn't not. That night, I searched Vanessa's maiden name on every site I could think of. Nothing came up at first until I tried a legal docket site for civil filings. Boom. 2 restraining orders. Filed in different counties. Both dismissed. One was by an exco worker. The other was by a teenage girl. She'd done this before. Filed papers. Built a story. Tried to erase someone. Except now she tried it with the wrong person. Because I wasn't backing down. I was just getting started. The 2 dismissed restraining orders against Vanessa were like a door cracking open. They were old, one from 5 years ago, the other from when she was barely out of college. But they had names. And one of them, the teenage girl, wasn't hard to track down. Her name was Kelsey Ward, and she'd filed against Vanessa when she was 16, claiming emotional manipulation and retaliatory threats in a foster home setting. That part hit me hard. I hadn't known Vanessa had worked in foster care before she met my dad. She never talked about her past. Just made comments like, "People will always twist your kindness." So I took a risk. I found Kelsey's Instagram, now 21, doing okay it seemed, and I messaged her. "Hey, you don't know me, but I think we have a Vanessa connection. I found court docs about your case. I think she's doing it again to me. Would you talk?" She replied an hour later. I've been waiting 5 years for someone to say that to me. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Kelsey told me everything. How Vanessa had built trust, then turned on her. How she'd twisted normal teenage behavior into threatening conduct. How the foster parents eventually backed Vanessa, just like my dad did, and how Kelsey ended up moving homes under a cloud of false accusations. Sound familiar? Kelsey cried when I told her about the folder I got, about the peaking lie, the PI reports, and the campaign to paint me as unstable. "She did it again," she said. "She did it again." And then she said something that stopped me cold. She used to brag about being able to clean up family messes without leaving fingerprints. Like this was her skill set. That same night, I sent Kelsey the screenshots and recordings. Not because I wanted revenge, but because if she ever wanted to reopen her case, she deserved to have everything I had. The next morning, I woke up to an email. Not from Kelsey, not from my dad, but from Harriet G. Barrow, the private investigator. Subject line, "You're not the first. I won't be part of this anymore." Inside, PDF. Her full report. The real one. The one she never sent Vanessa. It was 38 pages long. And on page 7, a note that changed everything. Subject Ezra Monroe shows no behavior of concern. Attempts to paint him as unstable appear inconsistent with findings. She knew. She knew. And Vanessa tried to bury it. That report was my nuke. And I was going to drop it. Harriet's report sat on my desktop like a loaded weapon. Not just because it cleared my name, but because it confirmed that Vanessa knowingly lied and my dad willingly ignored the truth. I could have gone public, posted it on social media, sent it to my dad's office. But I wanted it to hit where it would hurt. So I sent it to his mother, my grandmother. She and I used to be close. After I moved in with Dad and Vanessa, we didn't see each other as much, but she always sent cards on birthdays and made sure I had winter boots when Vanessa forgot. I drafted a short email. Hi, Grandma. I hope you're well. I'm sorry I haven't answered your calls. Things have been really hard lately, and I didn't know how to explain it, but I think you should see this. It's the real reason I'm no longer living with Dad and Vanessa. It's 38 pages, but page 7 says everything. Love, Ezra. She opened it that evening. I know because she replied 2 hours later. I am so sorry, sweetheart. I had no idea. None. What they did to you, it's unforgivable. Give me some time. I'm gonna fix what I can. The next morning, everything blew up. My friend Dylan, the one across the street, texted me, "Dude, Vanessa's car isn't in the driveway. Neither is your dad's." By noon, I got a string of missed calls from my dad's other siblings. Apparently, my grandmother had forwarded the report to everyone in the family. Uncles, aunts, cousins, even Dad's boss. She included a note. This is what really happened to Ezra. Read it, then ask him why. By 6 p.m., my dad finally called. Not to apologize, not even to deny it. He just said, "You didn't have to go nuclear." I replied, "You didn't have to betray me." Then I hung up. But here's where it gets crazy. That night I got another email. From Harriet Barrow again. Asterisk, they've hired a new investigator. Not me. Someone less ethical. Be careful, Ezra. I think they're trying to shift blame. Also, check Vanessa's marriage record. Something won't add up. Asterisk. I had no idea what she meant. But I was about to find out. After Harriet's second warning, I felt this rush of anxiety and adrenaline I couldn't shake. Vanessa's marriage record? What did that even mean? I went digging again, county databases, marriage registries, legal notices. Took a while, but I found it. Vanessa Lynn Barrett, married once before, to a man named Dominic Reeves. 5 years ago. Filed for divorce just over 2 years ago. So, before my dad. Not illegal. But here's the thing. The divorce was never finalized. It was marked, dismissed without prejudice. Which means she's still legally married. That meant her marriage to my dad is invalid. And suddenly everything made sense. Why the house had to be in his name only. Why she wanted me out before anything official changed. Why she was desperate to erase me before any legal documents were finalized. She didn't want me in that house when it all came crashing down. But I wasn't done yet. I kept digging and found Dominic Reeves's LinkedIn. Construction management. Denver. I messaged him. Short and polite. Hi. I believe you were once married to someone named Vanessa Barrett. I have a few questions regarding legal status and timelines. No drama. Just clarity. He responded that night. Wait. She's married again? You're her stepson? Bro, you need to talk to a lawyer now. Then he called me. We talked for 20 minutes. He told me Vanessa left him after convincing him to transfer part of his business assets into her name during a rough patch. She ghosted. He never pushed the divorce because he didn't want to reopen that trauma, and figured if she wanted out, she'd handle it. But she never did. And now she was pretending to be someone else's wife, and trying to erase the one person who could blow her story up from inside the house. That's what I was. A liability. A witness. A loose thread. And that's when it hit me. They weren't just trying to evict me. They were trying to protect a fraud. After the call with Dominic, I didn't wait. I printed everything. The fake eviction accusation. The PI reports, both mine and the original. The forged narrative in the restraining order draft. The financial transfers. The pending house sale. Vanessa's still active marriage to Dominic. And finally, the call log and text history showing how they shut me out after it all began. I brought it all to the same family lawyer I'd spoken to earlier. He went silent after scanning through it, then leaned back and said, "Do you realize how serious this is?" I nodded. "I do now." He made a few calls, brought in a colleague who specialized in fraud and real estate law. They went over everything for 2 hours. Here's what they said. If Vanessa is still legally married to Dominic, then her marriage to my dad is void. That could have huge implications for property division, inheritance, and any financial arrangements she influenced while posing as a spouse. The attempts to fabricate a behavioral profile of me for eviction purposes, especially while I was still a minor, might qualify as defamation and emotional abuse. The manipulated bank transfers to a shell account, Barrow investigations, for the purpose of covering up a false narrative? Sketchy at best, possibly financial misconduct. And the kicker? If the house was sold while all this was in play, especially under a void marriage and through coordinated deception, the sale could be frozen or reversed. That was the moment I felt my chest unclench for the first time in weeks. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. They messed up. And now it was going to cost them. The lawyer asked if I wanted to go public, press charges, sue for damages, file a restraining order against them. I told him I needed one more day to think. That night, I got one final message from Vanessa. "This isn't going to end how you think." I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "You're right. It's going to end worse for you. Because this time, I'm the one writing the narrative." The next week moved fast. My lawyer filed a formal notice of potential legal action with the title company handling the house sale. Once they saw the flagged documentation, especially the part about Vanessa's invalid marriage and the financial misconduct, they froze the closing immediately. The house was pulled from the market the next morning. My dad didn't call. He showed up. At my mom's house, I heard the knock, opened the door, and there he was, standing on the porch like nothing had happened, like we hadn't been at war for weeks. He looked tired, gray in the face, like the fallout was catching up to him. "I didn't know," he said. "I just looked at him. She told me the divorce was finalized. I never saw any documents, but she had answers. Always had answers. Except when it came to me," I said. He nodded. "I messed up." I didn't say anything, because messed up doesn't cover hiring a PI to smear your own kid, kicking him out over a lie, and cutting him out of your life like he was an obstacle. "She's gone," he said. Vanessa packed up and left, took her car, emptied her closet, left a note saying, "I told you this would fall apart if you gave him time." He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a wrinkled envelope. Inside was the unsigned will, the one that cut me out. "I never signed it," he said, "but I thought about it. That's bad enough, I know." It was the closest thing to an apology I was going to get. So I looked him in the eye and said, "You picked someone who lied better than I could tell the truth." He flinched. "I'm not saying I deserve a prize for surviving you too, but I am saying you don't get to play Father of the Year just because she turned out to be worse." He stood there a moment longer, then said, "What now?" I shrugged. "That's not up to me anymore. That's up to you and the lawyers." And I shut the door. He stood on the porch for a few seconds. Then he left. No text, no follow-up, just silence. But this time, I was the one who chose it.